Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RAMP. Real Access Motivates Progress live Wednesday night podcast. We are so excited to have you back here with us again this week. And we have a cool show for you tonight. We are talking diversity, equity, inclusion, and you can't talk diversity, equity, inclusion without talking about disability. So I have a fabulous guest with us tonight, and I can't wait to introduce him to you. We have Dr. Silas Pinto with us. Welcome, Silas. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And thank you for having me on the show. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Oh, I think this conversation is well overdue, and I am looking forward to it as well. So tell everybody a little bit of who you are and what you do.
Well, everyone, I am a longtime resident of Providence, Rhode Island. I immigrated from the Cape Verdean Islands. My name is Silas Rodrigues Pinto. I hail from Achada Santo Antonio, which is part of Cape Verde, right off the west coast of Africa, for folks who don't know. And I have been here since I was a teenager. I went through school here, Roger Williams, went to classical high, then ended up at the University of Rhode Island. I worked for the Met High School as a school psychologist, then eventually went to Brown University for the Center for Alcohol and Addiction Studies for a little while, and then landed at Tufts University in the Department of Education, where I worked for about 12 years. There, I was a full-time faculty in the department as a school psychologist. I was a director of the school psychology program, and still affiliated as a co-director of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Leadership Program. And that's something that is really close to my heart. And last year, I heard about this positioning opening up right here at home, doing this very work. And I was telling Tina that it's always felt like that's what I was waiting for. People kept asking me, why in the world are you driving to Boston every day, 4 to 6 times a week, in that crazy traffic to go to work? And I said, because I haven't found a thing here at home just yet. And when this became available, and then went through the process and was invited by the mayor to join his team, working as director of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, I just was beside myself. It feels like the right kind of conversation that we need to bring at this point in time in Rhode Island. And one of the things that I appreciated and why it's long overdue, Tina, is that people tend to think of diversity, equity, and inclusion as something about race and ethnicity and gender and sexuality. And then they leave a whole fleet of things outside of that conversation, disabilities being one of them. And as a school psychologist working with children who were physically disabled or children that had different learning disabilities, it's something that's very real, and our schools continue to improve, but really has a long way to go, learning how to meet the needs of folks at that intersection, and also folks who are coming in from different countries in particular, and with learning disabilities in particular, that just still get things quite confused between what's a disability and what's a learning disability and what's an actual learning process. And when it comes to the physical needs of our students, a lot of our schools continue to struggle with making buildings accessible. And so, part of this conversation today, I'm sure, is to tease some of those things apart and to let folks know that we have a department now that is embedded within city governance that is taxed with thinking about these kinds of issues and raising these kinds of questions and bringing it to the community for true partnership, because we can't have this just be inside out or top down. It really needs to be more of a web if we want to see any dents in these kinds of true access in Rhode Island.
Absolutely. And I don't think that they could have picked a better person for the job, because I don't think there's anything in this department that you haven't tackled and you haven't done well or succeeded at. But you brought up a good point about the schools. And one of my big pet peeves about the schools is they make a wing or an aisle accessible for the few students that they may have in wheelchairs or physically challenged. The problem I have with that is my children were fine. I was the one in the wheelchair. So if the entire school is not accessible, you're not opening it up to the public or to the parents, grandparents, or the caretakers of these children. And what does everybody say? your student is only as good as the parents or the support system they have. If the support system can't get in and participate, then how good is their support system at home? What are we doing with the schools to make the entire schools accessible for everybody?
Well, when it comes to the physical space, I know we have a very robust team that has been thinking about issues of accessibility, physical access into the building. And of course, with new renovations, it's less of an issue, but we have this pretty massive problem, which is buildings that were built well before people were even thinking about people on wheelchairs. And this is one of the bigger issues that we need to tackle, build into our capital improvement plan, make sure that our director of public property and development and planning is centering these kinds of conversations. And our department is available to make sure that we're involved in the consultation and the thinking. And what I can say is that we have very thoughtful and very mindful directors and folks who are working in these projects to make sure that the layout is just not just a basic building, but it's about people. It's about interactions. It's about making sure that folks feel welcomed into different spaces. And you brought up, how can families and grandparents come into the building? Well, for the longest time, we hadn't even really thought of parents as a partner in education. So we didn't think about their kind of access in schools. And this is not it's not really tapping on the city at this particular juncture. We're actually thinking about these issues, but we have to understand that parents were really brought to the table as an education partner relatively recently in US history. 1997 is when we actually made it law that they can come and sit and be part of the students' lives and experiences. So we're sort of crawling with toddlers in a lot of this kind of work, and we're trying to really get to walking and running. And I'm excited to be part of a team that's really conscientious. When we have conversations about planning or talking about what does diversity mean, we're not leaving issues around physical accessibility out of the conversation. And that's really meaningful because we have students who are trying to educate who need access to these buildings. And if people are familiar with laws, they work very slowly. They change very slowly, which is why we need people in the community to continue pushing, because I can't think of a single special education law or issues around accessibility that was not started by community members. That we live in that space of ethics, right? We feel that things are not right. We can see that things are not right. We can see who's being left out and who's not being called in. And then we push for those laws to change. And I think shows like this do just that. It raises awareness in our communities. It calls partners to the table so that we can be thinking about this together, because it's your voice and mine and our community members and the people actually drawing out the plans that need to all be at the table so that it's as comprehensive as possible. So
Absolutely. I mean, we are stronger together. And as we all say, nothing for us without us. And that goes into every community. I'm not talking just about the disabled population, but I'm also talking about every community that's in the diverse, equity, or the minority portion. If you don't say something, the answer is always no. If you step up and you start, don't only have a problem, have a few solutions. You know, they may not all work, but at least if you're bringing the ideas to the table, it's community partners that truly makes something like this happen. What are some of the other areas that you think are left out when people think about diversity, equity, inclusion? What are some of the areas that you think people forget about?
At the very beginning, just at the heart, not just in terms of social identities, I think sometimes we forget about the power of relationships and conversation, the power of information, and making sure that people know their rights. Because if you don't know your rights, you can't exercise your rights. Therefore, you have no rights. And for us, we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the first part of the conversation is, well, what about the racial groups and the ethnic groups and the gender groups and sexuality groups and the access groups? And it's sort of the list of social identities come to play. And sometimes you need to zoom out just a bit and say, okay, let's talk about people for a moment. Let's talk about what people generally need. Let's talk about how systems are set up and whether or not we're actually meeting the people's needs, because in many cases, we're talking about intersecting identities, right? So we're talking about someone who has a physical disability and is part of an immigrant population and is having other challenges. And so when we talk about intersections, that's something that I think was missing from the conversation. And it was lagging behind in that conversation about integration. So for me, I'm trying to see where the conversations have been. And as the city works towards a sort of bigger strategic plan for the city, we're targeting areas like education and communication, right? Because that's a huge piece, is making sure that people are informed. Because sometimes there are resources and programs available, but if you don't know about it, you can't utilize it. We're looking at practices, procedures, and policies. So the practices being the interpersonal, everyday interactions and playing out of that particular game that we do every day. We need to make sure that our procedures are not just embedded in, just the historical, what we've always done. That's just the way it's always been, because it was a lot of the things were built to the exclusion of people, right? And so we want to make sure that we're teasing apart all of those procedures and those routines that have become habits that are sometimes harmful. And we want to make sure that we're looking at policies in a very intentional way, because policies are usually a reflection of the laws, but they're also written by folks who are trying to keep some status quo or minimize some of the needs, or can we cut corners around this? And when we're talking about physical disabilities, you can't cut corners because that's also a safety issue. We're also looking at partnerships. That is at the very heart of diversity, equity, and inclusion work, right? So if we want to improve our workforce, if we want to make sure that there is representation at different levels, if we want to make sure that people are included both at their jobs and throughout the city, and that there's a sense of belonging and fairness, we need to work with our partners, because they have their ears and feet and hands and eyes on the ground. They're working with residents all the time. I've been a resident of Providence for 31 years, and I've only been working for the city for less than a year. And so there's the working with people in the city for the betterment of our residents, but I've been a resident a lot longer, and I still live in South Providence. So for me, when I'm walking through the streets, I'll give you a perfect example. The other day, I was walking around the corner from my house, and I'm watching all of these trees and bushes that were cut and just laid on the sidewalk. And a person who was on a wheelchair had to go into the street to go around that. And sometimes it's not because people are doing that on purpose. It was they're cutting the trees down, but they're like, I can finish it tomorrow. And it's like, no, you can't. This needs to be with the people around you in mind. We were able to address it almost immediately, but that's the kind of example. We need people to go through their day caring about how other people go through their day. And so for us, that's one of the things that we're trying to center. Some of that work is being done. We're trying to coordinate to make sure that as many people are at the table as possible and bring in their ideas, because that's the value of diversity, is making sure that more voices are attacking a particular issue. I shouldn't say attack. More voices are talking through a particular challenge.
Oh, like I said, this is why we work so well together, and I love working in Providence, because there's so many open minds and so many ideas and perspectives that need to be changed. Like my thought is, we all need to meet at a table. We all need to put all of our differences aside. I didn't say not know about them. I didn't say forget about them. I said put them aside. Meet at the table, meet in the middle, and work our way out to start bringing people together. If we don't find a middle ground to start coming together, instead of all of this hate and judgment before you even know somebody, we're never going to get anywhere, and we're never going to make anything better. That we need to meet in the table and work our way out at a common ground, at an area. I so believe that that's the way we're gonna change this, and we need to open ideas to new perspectives. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, actually, I was trying to find a place to be like, let me add something real quick. Uh, because, sometimes when we're having conversations about a particular community, we think that we need to take their issues off the table in order to put ours in, and they can coexist. They're all part of the same narrative. And so we have to come to the table knowing that I should be able to put my issue on the table and you put yours and then somebody else, and we put our successes as well, and the victories and the resiliency of our communities, that all of that is part of the story. And then we try to figure out that problem, because sometimes if we're talking, but we've taken everything off the table, well, what are we talking about exactly again? And we can't see any patterns. We can't actually make sense of any of it. I think about it as any kind of interaction. If I'm working with my children in school or with my own kids, and they say, Dad, I have this particular issue. And I'm like, well, I also have a particular thing I want to talk to you about. Both of them exist, and they both should be on the table so that we can figure it out. That's real problem solving. So I appreciate that idea of all coming to the table. And I'm also wanted to add that it's okay for all of those things to be on the table, and that you putting something on the table doesn't mean that somebody else has to remove theirs. In fact, we may find that we have some common struggles. We may find that we have some common possibilities and opportunities to synergize. I mean, you came to the Cape Verdean Festival, and we have the Accessibility is Beautiful event that's happening, and we're calling the community to come and participate in that. It shouldn't just be, oh, this is a cultural event, so therefore we'll let them do that, or this is an accessibilities event, and therefore, if we come together for celebrations, we should also be able to come together when we're struggling with issues and just pause for a moment. I think we need to develop like some real listening skills to be like, tell me what's on your mind. What are your needs? And then to really spend some time there, because then we start doing a bit of that oppression Olympics, right? You have your issue, and before you even finish your sentence, I'm already like, oh, I get exactly what you're saying because I'm an immigrant. Or,
Right.
or I totally understand you because, I identify as a different gender, or whatever it is. We're immediately trying to connect with each other because we understand pain. But I think it undermines some of the work that we need to do. Sometimes we just need to sit with a person's story at that moment, take all of that information. Sometimes it may be overwhelming, but if we're there together, we can sort of help each other navigate that space.
I completely agree with you because I try to make a point to go to everybody's celebration. I want to celebrate. I want to learn how everybody else celebrates, from the Cape Verdean Festival to the folk festivals to the Newport. Like, I've been to all of them, the refugee festivals. I've been to all of them because the only way that I'm going to learn and I'm going to grow is by immersing myself into other people's celebration and what they're celebrating and what it's all about, and to know. But in the other way, disability is the largest minority in this country, and it's the only minority that doesn't discriminate across the board. It's also the only minority that anybody can join at any time. I ended up in the disability community in a 5-minute procedure completely out of the blue. So if we're making everything diverse and accessible, and we all support one another, no matter who in your community ends up in this wonderful community, we are there to support you. We are already have the path and the plan and ready to make things accessible, to help you and to lift you up. So everybody needs to be working together. And I welcome all the communities to come to Accessibility is Beautiful and celebrate with us, so you can learn more about us and find out how much we have in common with each other, because you will be shocked of how much we truly have in common with everybody. And I have vendors from every celebration that I went to throughout the state all summer long. So you might find somebody from your community who's a vendor at our community because they got it. And it's so that important. That's why I love Providence, because Providence is so diverse. So what are some of your plans to get people involved?
One of the first things that we did when we first started, I mean, within the first couple of weeks, we were already planning some opportunities for roundtables and what we call listening sessions. And I think sometimes people hear listening session, and so they're expecting to come and listen to us. And we're like, no, 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 no. We're actually here to listen to you. And those were really fantastic. We held some roundtables, listening sessions for folks who are already working in Providence, so we can get a sense of what's important to them and ways that we can enhance that sense of belonging, right? And the way that we do that, because for us, belonging is at that intersection of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? So if you are making sure that people feel seen and heard and represented, if you are making sure that their voices are included in the process, if you're making sure that processes are fair and just, that somewhere, once you can do these things that are relatively tangible, right? You can see whether or not there's an increase in diversity. You can see whether or not people are addressing particular needs. We can comb through policies and make sure that people are being called to that situation. And then they get to tell us whether or not they feel that kind of belonging that we're aiming for. So we did that at the very beginning. We had partners come from lots of different corners of Providence, and that was our hope, because we have 15 wards, and we want to make sure that representatives from the different regions were being heard and they were at the table. And we had organizations ranging from the Nonviolence Institute to the Southside Cultural Center, to folks from the Center for Southeast Asians, or Oasis International, and the Jewish Community Center, and many more, to just basically have that initial conversation about, hey, this department is here, and I don't work for myself. I'm actually here working for you. I remembered looking for this opportunity to give back to my community, and sometimes in these days it sounds almost cliche-ish, right? And it is true, because I came here and it took a lot of people caring to actually get me to where I am, right? That idea about pulling yourself up by the bootstrap, not really true. I probably made it to where I am because of all of these social identities that I carry, right? We know that the research says if you're able-bodied, people gravitate towards you. If you're a man or boy, present as such, people will gravitate towards you. If you come across as relatively open and extroverted and friendly, people will gravitate towards you. And all of these things were privileges that I carried. And the fact that I speak English, for example, that's another thing. And on the other side, all of those other things have also been shown to not have people show up to really give you that kind of support. And so we need to dispel those kind of myths that people just happen to make it on their own. And of course, we love exceptions to rules, right? But the rule is that when people come here and they're alone, and they have a disability of some kind, whether it's visible or invisible, and they come from different religions and they speak a different language, and they are gendered female, woman or girl, that those are the kinds of folks that don't get as much support. So we need to make sure that that kind of truth is also being spread, and it should be spread by folks who are part of some of these more advantaged groups, right? So I am not physically disabled, which I think can make me a great accomplice in this kind of work, but I'm not here to speak for people who are physically disabled, just as I wouldn't want people to speak about my immigrant population and my experience who are not part of that particular community. But we need to be able to kind of just demystify some of these issues. There's another myth out there now. People might disagree with me. We use the word empowerment a lot in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I remember a speaker that had come to Tufts to speak to our students. Her name is Grace Marino, and she works for the LGBT Chamber of Commerce in Boston. And she had talked about empowerment with us. And she's like, the way we define empowerment, if we're talking about this idea of reaching out because I have more power, taking your power, showing it to you and handing it back to you, that's not really empowerment, right? That's just me using my power and authority to exercise even more power and authority. But if we are here to help eliminate or break down some of those barriers that have been put up over years, whether they're through laws or whether they're through like physical spaces that are inaccessible for certain people, as you don't belong here. If we can break down those barriers, then people get to exercise the power they already have. And I really subscribe to that idea. And I think that that's something that we want to make sure that Providence is thinking more and more about, is how to go back to through all of these different ways that we've come to be, through practices, procedures, and policies, and make sure that we are making it as open as possible for people to come out and exercise the power that we know they have. So I hope that kind of answers part of the question you were asking.
That absolutely answered that, and it just reaffirms the fact that they have the right person for the job over there. I couldn't be more proud to have you leading us. You know, the other thing, I love what you said about the empowerment, because there is also the exception to the rule, and I believe I'm one of those exceptions to the rule, because I am a white disabled person. Who I find people gravitate towards because I'm a positive person. I don't lash out, I don't yell, I don't scream, I don't call out businesses who happen to be not successful. I help. I give ideas, I give solutions, I walk people through it, as I call it, accessibility for dummies, because you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. I didn't know it until I happened to utilize a wheelchair and saw it for myself. So I don't want to get on anybody else's case for me not knowing it, because they don't live what I know. Like you said, you don't want anybody talking about your immigrant status. You can't do anything for the disabled community and actually be accessible unless you call somebody like me to show you how you're not accessible and how to fix it. You know, and this is why great partnerships like we have are such a great idea. And this gravitates towards all of the other minorities and all of the other people that speak up. Just because you're a minority does not mean you don't have a voice. Just because you don't think people gravitate toward you doesn't mean you don't have something to say. It doesn't mean you can't make a difference in a positive impact way, by listening, by changing your perspective, and working with other people to make a difference. None of us are going to do this on our own. It's only together are we going to band everybody together. And I think Providence, with you at the helm, is going to be the leader in all 39 cities and towns in Rhode Island, because it's people like you and your perspective that is going to make people open their eyes, step up, roll up, and be part of the conversation to make the change. So I cannot thank you enough for all of that. I want you to tell everybody how they can get involved.
So one of the things that we're going to be doing over the next couple of months or so is starting to roll out our strategic planning for the city, and we're doing it in different parts. So this is a bit of a preview for folks that we've done a lot of roundtables and listening sessions with community members. We've had one-on-one folks, we've had small group conversations, and we want folks to know that we've been taking all of that information, and we're going to be generating a report that basically outlines the diversity, equity, and inclusion engagement that we've done so far, so that our community can say, yes, this is what we've been saying. This is where the priorities need to be. These are the things that we would love for the city to take up. And so we're going to be looking for more opportunities to hear from folks. We didn't get a chance to hear from a lot of people because, just to be honest, right, when this position came out, people didn't really know that we were here. People, that's why I keep saying it, that we're here. Folks are still confused. What's this department compared to other departments? Because it's so new. It's something that literally started this year. And so it's not part of everyone's sort of daily experience with the city of Providence. So we're trying to put ourselves on a map first by really making sure that those relationships are in place. And people that we've worked with in the community for the last, couple of decades in different capacities, whether it is the African-American ambassadors group that has been spearheading a lot of the work around reparations in Providence, or the Latino ambassadors group that meets with the mayor, or the Cape Verdean ambassadors, or the different groups that are emerging to make sure that they bring their voice to Providence. We want to make sure that we continue to create space for that to happen. Now, I also want people to know that getting involved for us is not just coming and saying, Silas, this is what we want, right? That there's a responsibility on our end to take what you're saying and convert them to actionable steps so that you can see progress. But we're also asking people, as you mentioned, come to us with some kinds of solutions that we can monitor over time, right? People talk about data-based and evidence-based decisions all the time, which is really fantastic. But the truth is, Providence is at the very forefront of a lot of this work. And so a lot of this is going to be new. We are looking to what other cities are doing. We're part of local and regional and national consortiums to make sure that we are doing things that are informed. At the same time, we can't take what's happening in a city with like 600,000 people or one that's with like 50,000 people and just map it onto Providence, right? It doesn't really work. We still need to go through the steps of figuring out what really works and needs to work here. And the only way we can do that is by having honest conversations, but also focusing on constructive feedback. And that's where the community really comes in. Because again, I'm a member of this community, and many people, and by that, I don't just mean living in Providence. I'm talking about anyone who's working for Providence has made a commitment to see Providence move forward. And so we're part of this team. And there are folks, for example, who have lived in Providence for a long time, and they no longer live in Providence. That doesn't make them any less of a team member in this work, because people still love Providence and they moved because of work or they moved because of whatever other circumstances. We still need their voices, and we still need to come together to do that. And again, don't be afraid to bring something to the table, even if it's at odds with somebody else's kind of concern. They can coexist, because the only way we can get through it is by really seeing the full landscape of what we're dealing with, so we can come up with like a very reasonable, comprehensive plan to tackle it.
And I commend you tremendously for all of this. One thing I'm going to ask all of our listeners to do, though, is when you do come to the table, realize that this is new. This is trial and error, and there will be errors. Do not be discouraged because something didn't work the first time. It's going to take a few times to get it right. It's going to take a few falls to get back on the horse and to try it again. Stick it out, stay with us. And I'm telling you, if you are on Silas's team, you are going to be on the right team and you're going to get there. You just need to be patient, be equitable, and know that your problem isn't the only problem. It doesn't mean that your problem doesn't matter, but you have to understand that everything takes time and everything is going to take a process. So stick out the process. Don't come to one meeting. Don't feel that, nothing got accomplished and don't come back again, because that doesn't help. You need to keep showing up. You need to stepping up. I didn't get to where I was by rolling in once and then saying, okay, you guys do the rest. No, I keep showing up. I keep showing up at events. I come when I'm not invited. I just roll in with a smile and say, okay, what can I do? And what is the project tonight? Help out another community, learn another perspective, and just keep showing up. Even when you're not wanted, keep showing up with a positive attitude and smile on your face, because eventually you will be seen, you will be heard, and change will happen, because I'm seeing it myself. So change will happen, and it won't take as long as you think. But I'm telling you, if you stick on Dr. Pinto's team, you are in the right place, because I'm on Dr. Pinto's team and I know I'm in the right place, because I am super excited to work with him. And we already have so many plans going forward that you need to join this team. Anything else that you want to make sure that the viewers know? I want to make sure that everything that they need to know, you are getting out and in front of everybody.
The one thing that I really want people to know is that, our Providence municipal team, from the mayor to all of the workers, that we're really a team doing this work. So we have a department that is focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it isn't just the department of diversity, equity, and inclusion's responsibility to do this work. So when you think about the mayor himself, who every decision is a critical decision. Every decision is taking into account every resident of Providence. When you think about all the chiefs, when you think about all the departments like sustainability and doing amazing environmental justice and racial equity work, or arts, culture, and tourism, or our healthy communities, our police department and public safety as a whole, our telecommunications, everyone is working together to try to figure out what's the best way to maximize this thing that we call diversity, equity, and inclusion. Everyone is in this game. Everyone is trying to push our city forward and put us in a map, obviously in a very positive way. We want to be that mid-sized city that people are talking about, not just in the United States, but all over the world. To understand that even a place that has less than 200,000 people, right, can come together in sometimes the most difficult circumstances. But as long as they're coming in with that positivity you're talking about, as long as they're coming in with the right mindset, to know that the moment you walk in the room, we actually see you. This is the kind of work where we look for you. So we're not just like, oh, there's that, but we're like, where are you? And as soon as you walk in, if you've ever been at an event and you're waiting for that person to walk through the door, as soon as it does, there's that little feeling. This is what we feel when we are at events and we're like, where's Mr. Cedric, right? Where's Morris? Like, where's Wendy? And as soon as they walk in and you're like, yeah, okay, now we can get some work done because I can't do this by myself. Even with our 2,000 team members, not enough. We have 179,000 people in Providence. You only have 2,000 people that work for the city of Providence. So that's a pretty big gap. If we want to see the level of change that we're looking for, we need to come to the table. And sometimes even that one sentence that you come to contribute, or the 5 minutes on your way home that you pass by to listen to an important meeting or decision, all of that is important. And we just need you to remember that when you're home, we are thinking about you, because we are those folks, either former residents, future residents. We're building a place where people will want to come to. And if you leave, we want you to come back. And if you live elsewhere, to know that this could be a place for you. We're not just building it for the people who are here right now in this moment. It's about the future, and it's about all of the folks who think about the space. So, and I hope that folks will make the time to come this weekend. Saturday is going to be a really wonderful opportunity for more discussion, for more engagement. And it's at the Steel Yard, which is beautiful. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go to the Steel Yard, but I know they just commissioned a really beautiful piece, kind of centering accessibility, so come and talk to the folks over there, come and learn, because it's not just about a celebration, it's education, and it's about supporting each other and showing up together. So
yeah, and every business that shows up gets automatically put into a raffle that they can win a free accessible ramp for their business. So all you have to do is show up and write your business down, and we can make your place accessible, because you could be the winner of the ramp. We donated one last year, and let me tell you, just that one ramp to that haircutting place, so many people are now going there to get their haircut. So you could be the next business that wins a free ramp just by showing up and learning something new. But yeah, the Tina's Table, everybody needs to see it, because it is a beautiful piece. I don't know, it's named after some crazy girl, but it is a beautiful piece. I was actually sick of waiting for everybody to invite me to the table, so I created my own table. So there's how you can make your own change. Create it. If you're not getting invited to the right tables, make your own. Now everybody wants to sit at my table. So make sure you make your own table. And the other thing that I'm going to mention is there is good and bad in every community. There is absolutely good and bad in every community. Some people are down on the luck. Some people are having a bad day. Do not judge an entire community because of the good and bad person that you happen to run into. You could be having a bad day. So what you think is a bad person is actually somebody having a bad day. So take it for what it is, as a grain of salt. You don't want to be judged by you. Trust me, you don't want to judge me on an early Sunday morning after I've been out late at an event on a Saturday night. You don't want to judge me, because I am not the person. Trust me. So if you don't want to be judged, do not judge anybody else. And like I said, positivity goes a long way, and we can change the world. Yeah. Positivity is contagious. It will go everywhere. If you keep coming back, you keep pushing forward, you keep having your voice heard, We see you, we hear you, we need you. We can't do this without you. Thank you so much, Dr. Pinto, for everything that you do. Like I said, I cannot say it enough. They have definitely picked the right person for this position because I can
Definitely.
work with you, and I just so embody love working with you. So I can't tell you what this means to my community. And if my community is empowered, everybody else's community can feel the same way by stepping up and being part of your team. How can people get in touch with you?
We have a very straightforward email. So it's DEIB, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, at providenceri.gov. So deeb@providenceri.gov. Those emails come straight to our department, straight to us. And again, if you have recommendations for the kinds of work that you'd like to see happen, we have lots of initiatives, perhaps for a different day where we can sort of describe the kinds of programming we're going to have available through the department for both our city workers as well as our community members. So that would be the best way to reach out to us. And probably in the next month or so, you're going to see our first newsletter. In a newsletter, there'll be more call outs asking you for recommendations for podcasts and books and things like that. I heard about a show called Ramp. You might want to recommend something like that. And then we take your recommendations and we put it back into the community because we don't bring all of the work and knowledge, right? Our goal is to put things into action because you can start with empathy, right? Stepping into other people's shoes. But I think in our work, we need to go one step forward and think about like empathy in action, compassion, actually doing something, right? So someone can trip and fall on their face and you go, ooh, if that were me, that would be horrible. But if you're just standing here, that doesn't help. It doesn't help the person. We need to see that, empathize, walk over. What can I do? Help you up. And that's the next step of this work.
Yeah, and put your damn phone down and stop videotaping and go help somebody up. Honest to God, that would go a long way. If you put the phone away and actually go lend a hand, that would help a long way up. Because I'll tell you, I fall out of my chair at least once a week, and I don't want to be videotaped. I want to be helped up. You know what I
Right.
mean? So go empower somebody. I hate using the word inspirational because all disabled people are not inspirational. We are not here to inspire you. We are here to prove to you that we are like everybody else. Trust me, my legs don't work. My mouth sure does. So what I can't use with my legs, I definitely use and overcompensate with my big mouth. So in a positive way, with a smile every time, make a difference. Every one of you can do it. Give us that website one more time.
The email is DEIB at providenceri.gov.
And give us your closing words of why people should be inspired to work with you.
Closing words on why people should be inspired. Well, the truth is we're looking for inspiration and it comes from very interesting places. And the one thing that I've learned, not just from this job here, but also working with students at a university for over a decade, is that we're constantly learning. We should just never underestimate what people have to offer. And there's formal education, there's informal education. I'll leave you with a closing words from my grandmother, who had a kindergarten education in Cape Verde, who lived through Portuguese rule, and so she didn't go to formal education, etc. And one of the things that I will never forget was because she raised 11 children, and she would say, don't tell people what to think. Maybe we can be in the work of pointing to things that people should be thinking about. And so this is the work that I try to embody today. So if you come into our team, if you come into this work, we're here to think about things, come up with innovative solutions, measurables, attainable kinds of solutions, and then putting them to work.
Thank you so much for all you do. I just enjoyed this conversation and I can't wait to keep the lines of community open. So thank you so much for taking tonight to be on our show. And when we redo our website, we are actually putting a link to your department on our website as a resource, because that's how good of a partner we are going to be. Is we're going to link you as a resource, because again, we cannot do this alone. We need to do this together, and this partnership is going to do nothing but grow. So thank you so much for taking the time tonight, and everybody get in touch with Dr. Pinto. You will not be disappointed. It is the place to be. It is where I'm at. So everybody needs to join the team and be part of the solution, not the problem. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all for listening.
And I welcome everybody to come back next Wednesday night. We have talk about inspiring. We definitely have a man who's to be inspired. He is paralyzed from the waist down, and he biked from California to Washington, D.C. On a hand cycle. So hear all about Adam Lane's adventures going from California to Washington on a hand cycle for United Spinal. Same time, same channel. And as I always say, don't just sit there. Make a difference, everybody. See you next week.
I'm Chaz Kalenda, and I'm running to be the next Rhode Island Attorney General. I practiced law for the last 16 years, 12 of them in the office of the Attorney General, so I have the knowledge and experience to do that job at a high level. I'm not here to fight for a political agenda. I'm not here to fight for a special interest. I'm here to fight for the rights of every Rhode Islander, no matter where you come from or no matter what your background is. I'll need your votes on September 13th for the primary election and November 8th for the general election. If you have any questions about where to vote or how to vote, please contact your local board of canvassers or the Secretary of State's office or website. I'm not running to be just another politician. I'm running to be a public servant who can serve as a much-needed check and balance on the state of Rhode Island to root out the corruption both inside and outside of our system. We need your support. You can visit my website at chas4ag.com to learn more about me, donate, or volunteer your time. I'm Chaz Kalenda, and I approve this message.
To take home the Golden Gloves, you've got to put in the work, and you've got to be tough as nails. Ashley Kalis was driven to achieve. Today, Kalis is still fueled by that same hope, grit, and determination. A mother of 3 school-aged boys and successful business owner who ran testing and vaccination sites across the state. Kalis is the fighter Rhode Island needs right now because it's time for a change. Ashley Kalis for governor.